Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your Audio Amigo, back with another Audio Amigo review for y'all. In sort of a Halloween special, we're going to be taking a look at an IEM that I got for Mrs. Audio Amigo after she fell in love with the fit and comfort at CanJam SoCal. These tiny little things are the Kotori Audio Vampire, a single balanced armature IEM priced at $106 from Singaporean company Kotori Audio. With these tiny minuscule shells and a single BA, how do these stack up with the other sort of all BA sets at or around this price range? And is this IEM worth getting if you have the tiny ears that these are designed for? Well, that's what we're going to find out. Inside the stylish Vampire box, you will find a little note as well as your warranty cards and other paperwork. You'll get the IEMs themselves, a cable, a nice Kotori Audio branded ear tip case with 3 solid core silicone ear tips in small, medium, and large. Always nice to see a branded carry case with these sort of things. And you also get one of these metal hockey puck style squeeze-sided cases with a felt soft touch interior to protect your IEMs from damage. I like these cases. They're typical on a lot of other IEMs, but I mean, they work well. They're pocketable, they're extremely crush and impact resistant. They feature, as I said, a soft lining to protect your IEMs from damage. Considering that Kotori is a smaller brand, this level of accessories I think is pretty understandable. While I would have liked to see things like a set of more premium ear tips, a modular cable, a cleaning cloth, that sort of thing, I think it's perfectly understandable for something that's right around $100 from a smaller company to have sort of the essentials, as long as the essentials themselves are pretty good. Take a quick look at the cable. This cable is what Kotori Audio calls their Carbon 3 IEM cable. This is a 2-wire twist that splits into individual wires at the Y-split. The plastic on these cables is nice. It doesn't feel super bad or anything. There is a bit of a metallic shine from the cable underneath. I will say the amp connector feels pretty low rent to me. There's no branding anywhere. It's sort of clear plastic. It's the same sort of thing that you would see on like a $10, $15 IEM. It is right angle, which I do like, but it's kind of perplexing that the amp connector is sort of this low rent when the Y-split is this really cool sort of tri-lobe nut design. It even has the Kotori Audio bird logo on it. The chin slider, as you can see, not only sits flush and is designed to look like a part of it, but also works real nice and stays put combined with the texture on those cables. So this I really like. The 2-pin connectors also match that bit of the hardware, leaving the amp connector even more left out. The ear hooks are comfortable. There's no crinkle because it's only 1 wire. And there is pretty clear stereo indication here on the inside of the connectors. I feel like this cable, considering the size and shape of the IEM, is appropriate. It's not super heavy or super chunky. It behaves well. There's no memory. It lays flat. It won't pull the IEMs this way and that way. I question the mismatch again between the amp connector and the rest of the hardware. These are a bit chunky. They don't weigh all that much. I did take these on a quick walk. This didn't swing enough to pull these out of my ears or anything. This is, like I said, relatively lightweight. I just question the chonk factor here when everything else is so thin. But, you know, cable isn't perfect. I do like it. I think it's fitting for the IEM. As I mentioned earlier, the Vampire here is a downright tiny IEM. This is a full resin construction with resin nozzles, and as you can see, a bit of a mesh over the nozzles to protect that balanced armature from moisture and debris. Another thing you can see is that there is absolutely 0 ventilation anywhere on the shell. Those are the 2-pin connectors. There's nothing on the faceplate, nothing on the inside. These are fully unvented design. So I did get some mild pressure buildup issues, but honestly, I don't know what the exact design of the acoustic resonating chamber they have in here is, but I think it does a decent job of sort of mitigating the pressure buildup issues that I had. I didn't feel the need to change to my Sancai tips or change up how I inserted them, and they were honestly fine. I'll talk about it a bit more in the comfort section, but one of the nicer sort of in terms of IEMs and sort of in terms of pressure buildup. One thing I will say is that because these are a sealed IEM, the isolation on this set is pretty darn good. It attenuates background noise extremely well, and if you pair it with foam tips, I could see people using these on planes or public transport as sort of a noise mitigation strategy, as well as getting some music. I'm not as nice as like active noise canceling, but the passive isolation on these, especially with foam tips, is quite good. Overall, I think Kotori's resin construction is pretty nice and solid. No real flaws that are visible anywhere. While the shells are very lightweight, they do feel nice and solid, and it feels like they could shrug off some drops, bumps, and scrapes. Now let's go ahead and pull up the specifications here for the Vampire. Inside those shells, behind an acoustic chamber, lies a single Knowles full-range balanced armature. These shells weigh under 3 grams each, and even with the cable, the whole package comes in under 25 grams. These are the lightest non-bullet IEMs I've ever weighed, which is pretty awesome if you think about it. The nozzles are also smaller than average at 5.8 millimeters, their widest point. The nozzles are also long, which affects the comfort in a positive way. We'll talk about that later. The Vampire are pretty easy to drive, being as they are single BA. Interestingly, however, you will need to watch your sources. These do change sound with higher impedance sources or impedance adapters. I don't know if that's a function of the resonance frequency of the balanced armature or if there's passive components in here that are affecting the frequency response. I would guess the latter. I think there is some passive stuff going on here, but again, I'll talk about that later. The Vampire is a downright tiny IEM, and single branded BA. I think for $100, it's a pretty decent little package. So now we'll go ahead and pull up the Cool Wall. While the Vampire is a tiny little IEM, the overall sort of shape and design on it is pretty unique. I like the fact that the right IEM has the Kotori bird logo, and the left IEM has the sort of Vampire V logo that you find on the case. So bonus points for having different looking shells at a glance, even if the colors aren't completely different. The red panel fades sort of gently into the black surround, and as you can see, it catches the light and then sort of fades. I honestly like it, sort of blood-themed, if you will. Kind of a sort of mildly evil look to them, especially in ear. I like them. I'll be placing these in Cool because I just kind of dig the design. I think it's a different take of art on sort of resin shells. It's sort of artistic but simple. The size is honestly what's carrying these. These are just, that's my thumbnail. That's how small these are. While I might like these, the ladies do tend to have much more discerning taste than I do, so we'll go ahead and check in with the council and see what they have to say about them. Right away, we see the Vampire is a hit with the ladies. We have 4 pretties and a single not pretty from lady number 4, who acts as the gatekeeper here as usual. I don't think she likes red IEM. She tends to prefer blue ones. Moving on to comments and compliments, exact same score. Well done, Kotori Audio. I think this is a pretty good result. Looking through their thoughts, there seems to be a lot of positivity from the ladies. They like the size, the style, and the color choices on the Vampire, except lady number 4, who just doesn't like these apparently. If you're watching Kotori Audio, don't worry, she just has very particular tastes. The product page on Kotori's website for the Vampire says that the Vampire was their attempt to create a convenient daily driver shaped and sized to provide long-term comfort for as many people as possible. I would say that they've honestly succeeded. If you take a sort of standard IEM sort of bean shape and you put it through a copier at like 75-60%, this is what you would get. They're extremely small, and those long sort of prominent nozzles mean that you can sort of adjust the insertion depth depending on your tips however you'd like. You can have them a deeper fit, you can have them shallow fit, whatever suits your ear shape. Personally speaking, these have been some of the most comfortable IEMs that I've worn to date. Yes, they do have a little bit of pressure buildup going on, but honestly, compared to the other sealed balanced armature IEMs I've tried, this is pretty good, and it's up there with some of the even allegedly vented balanced armature sets. I did feel like these are the sort of IEM that just sort of disappear into your ears, especially on a long flight or when you're doing office work listening to like background music. My wife 1000% agrees. I mentioned earlier that I bought these for her. She tried them at the Kotori booth at CanJam SoCal, and I saw her actually smile when she tried them on. She was moving her mouth, doing all her weird faces she tries to do to dislodge IEMs, and these stayed put, earning a score of like a glove. She's commented that these are among the most comfortable IEMs she's ever worn, if not the most comfortable IEM she's ever worn, and she felt so strongly about this set that, well, we own them now. So if you have small ears and you've been looking for a truly small IEM, this is a fantastic option for you. Let's get started in on how the Vampire sound, kicking things off with the bass. Being a single balanced armature with a sound signature that they describe as devoid of harshness, I wasn't expecting a ton of bass from the Vampire here. And then while that was true, I was a little surprised at how textured and sort of resolute it was on the low end of things. Like AFUL with the Magic One, Kotori is using acoustic structures and maybe passive components to boost the bass response. Because the Vampire actually has bass. One bass from Tiesto actually felt like it was moving some decent air in my ears, and the whole song was just really punchy and dynamic sounding, and it got better with higher volumes. The sub-bass rumble was there, which is something that I don't typically find on these sort of more neutral tuned balanced armature sets. The bass extension was honestly really nice all the way through the sub bass, and it continues into the mid bass. The drums in Tusk, for example, have a really nice incisiveness to them. They're rendered very accurately by the Vampire. Very satisfying texture to the drum skins. This isn't what I would call boosted bass. It's not super dynamic, but it's very fast, very articulate, very accurate, especially when you consider this is a single BA doing this. If you're a bass head or you prefer, boosted, boomier, more energetic bass, you'll most likely be disappointed here. But if you have an appreciation for fast, articulate bass that's very accurate, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by the Vampire here. The mid-range on the Vampire is extremely well realized since the bass doesn't really have any boost to it at all. That's not to say that the mid-range sounds lean, however, because the Vampire actually has some decent warmth and heft to its notes. The bass guitar in Amor, Amor, Amor has some really good buzziness to the strings. Luis's voice has that melodic weight and warmth that it has here on the Vampire. I honestly think the lower mids on this set are really, really nice. Instruments are well separated. The resolution is a bonus. There's really no masking going on either. This driver does a pretty good job here in the mid-range. Female vocals are where we start to see the more relaxed tuning of the Vampire start to take effect. While female vocals aren't necessarily recessed, they aren't forward or spotlit or really the focus of this tuning. The ladies of Piki, I think, will sound a little less intense and forward in their songs than normal, especially compared to the sort of funky bass guitar and the drums that accompanies them here in Kawaii Kaiwai. But their vocals aren't necessarily pushed back, and crucially, the timbre and tonality of their vocals and harmonies feel pretty natural to me. I feel like the mids here are warm and comforting. I know that some folks really can't deal with excitable female vocals, so they must have turned them down here just a bit to make it, more relaxing for more people. I think it works pretty well. The upper mids and treble, however, are where we find the sort of anti-fatigue tuning really start to kick in. It works well, but it does have its downsides. Female vocal harmonics are a little uneven. Madonna's sustained notes in La Isla Bonita have some nice energy behind them in terms of overall harmonics, but what I do find is that some of her whisperier or softer notes decay a little unnaturally quick for my liking. It gives her vocals a bit of an ethereal nature to it, a tiny bit of thinness sort of sneaks in there. However, female vocals essentially never got sibilant, even at higher volumes. However, the naturalness of those harmonics does suffer. It's a bit of a trade-off going on here. Similar thing happens in the treble with the upper instrument harmonics. I feel like the Vampire has sort of just enough energy in the treble to have a satisfying incision and sparkle to instrument and cymbal harmonics without having them become overly sharp and fatiguing. The percussion in Funky Town, for example, has those electronic snares and hi-hats with all the energy, those prominent bells and synth notes here. None of those are piercing, sharp, over-energetic, or fatiguing. They do, however, fade off a little quickly like the vocal harmonics do. I wouldn't describe the Vampire here as being an airy set, but I do feel like the treble has sort of barely enough sparkle and incision to keep the Vampire from sounding completely flat and lifeless. I think they've mostly pulled off the balance here. I mentioned earlier being surprised by the bass performance and texture on the Vampire, and that does extend to sort of just the resolving ability of the driver on the low end. It really had no issues resolving low-end details. Noah's Time Traveler, for example, with those extremely quick, aggressive bass moments, they were rendered surprisingly well by the Vampire here, with decent texture and really nice speed and snappiness to the notes. Very impressive for a single BA, in all honesty. I feel like that acoustic chamber is really doing some work. Waltz for Debbie also does pretty well here on the Vampire. The background conversation is very clear and easily audible, go with that warmth that it has going on. And most of the more obvious glassware moments are extremely easily audible in the ears. While the fast decay also applies here, since these are sort of fast, quick moments, hitting a glass on something, they're rendered very well. I would say just the overall sort of treble unevenness is audible on this track. Compared to other sort of BA sets, I would say in terms of pure technical ability, this does fall just beneath the AFUL Magic One, mostly because it loses out on sort of treble high-end detail. It is quite close, though, and it's to be expected with that more relaxing treble tonality. The stereo separation and perceived 3D soundstage on the Vampire is, again, surprisingly good. I think it might be down to a combination of the pretty good isolation and the design of that acoustic chamber, but Painted Black sounds really nice and wide with the sitar and guitar in one ear and the drums and bass guitar in the other. The Vampire, I feel, does really well with very stereo tracks like this that sort of play around with the imaging. No issues with separation or sort of a claustrophobic feeling to the sound. And the perceived 3D soundstage is also pretty darn great. One Wish sounds very deep on the Vampire. You have the koto and the bass guitar sort of front and center. The percussion and the synthesizer sort of fill in the space behind you and around you very nicely. There's pretty good depth and very solid imaging here on the Vampire. I have no issues with the way it deals with very well-mastered tracks. I would even say it's above average for IEMs this price class. Really, really solid performer here. As I mentioned earlier, the Vampire does change sound when exposed to impedance adapters or higher output impedance sources. Let me go ahead and pull up the graph here. As you can see, there's an inflection point right at about 800 hertz. Everything below that is attenuated. Everything above that is boosted. In ear, the main effect is that the Vampire basically just gets brighter. It's not my preferred sound. The Vampire isn't a super bassy IEM to begin with. The fact that it loses bass with impedance adapters means you probably should be a little bit careful what source you're choosing with these. If you have a Vampire and it sounds noticeably brighter than what I've been describing, maybe check your source and see what kind of output impedance you have on that. You might be getting the unintentional brighter tuning. The guys at Kotori Audio, I think, have succeeded in their goals. Their site says that the Vampire was supposed to be devoid of harshness, allowing for long-term listening comfort. And you know what? That's exactly what it is. The bass and treble energy are subdued and toned down to the point where there isn't really much risk in the way of fatigue or harshness or over-energeticness to the sound. If you're being negative, you could say that the Vampire lacks in excitement or dynamism, but if you're being nice about it, you would say that the sound is delicate and clean and clear. I think that this sort of sound really thrives for very long, drawn-out listening sessions where sort of comfort, balance, and clarity are the main goals. However, this is not the only set with a tuning similar to this, so let's look at the competition. First of all is a very similar set. It's also a single BA, the AFUL Magic One, priced at $140 US. As I mentioned, both of these sets have single BAs. Both of these sets also use acoustic structures, and I'm pretty sure they also both use passive filters, but again, I'm not 100% sure on the Vampire here. I think that these two are overall quite similar in the sound. The AFUL is fully vented, so there's no pressure buildup issues here, but the Vampire is much smaller, easier to fit in ears, and isolates sound better. In terms of sort of tuning and sound, the Magic One comes off a little more neutral sounding to me. It is a little brighter, a little airier, a little bit more detailed, but the Vampire, by contrast, comes off a bit warmer, more chilled out, just more relaxing. These two, honestly, are more similar than they are different. If you want a full-on relaxation set that is still very balanced, the Vampire, I think, is a better value at MSRP. However, if you have larger ears and there's a sale going on and you don't mind that brighter, more detailed sound, I think the Magic One is still pretty great. Next up is sort of a last-minute addition. I actually got this set in this morning from the Slaya. Shout out to him. Check out his reviews on HeadFi, link in the description. But he sent me some things to measure, one of which is the much maligned Softears Studio 2, priced at $170 US. Did my A/B comparison this morning. The Magic One made the Vampire seem like the calmer, more relaxed choice. Well, now the Studio 2 makes the Vampire seem more excitable and more energetic. The bass on the Vampire is rumblier. The vocal harmonics here pop out a little more than they do on the Studio 2. In terms of overall technical and sort of detailed performance, I think that the Vampire is the more detailed set. The Studio 2 has this sort of forwardness with female vocals, particularly in some of the fundamentals, but again, it doesn't feel super natural to me when it comes to the harmonics. The treble here, in my opinion, is just a little soft and a bit wonky, very light. If you're looking for the most subdued and like chilled out treble performance, the Studio 2 is a potential option, but personally, I think the way that it handles female vocals is a little too odd for me. I think the Vampire is more timbrally correct, at least to my ears, even though the treble here is also not perfect. Next up is an IEM that I really should just hurry up and review because it keeps showing up in these comparisons, honestly for good reason. It's the delicate sounding SeeAudio Yume IV, priced at $200 US. Compared to the Vampire is, the warmer, more relaxing sounding set, but by less of a margin compared to something like the Studio 2. The acoustic chamber here on the Vampire yields what is, in my opinion, better bass response overall. It's more textured, more bouncy, more punchy. But the Yume IV does present vocals differently. It's sort of similar to the Studio 2, but better. The harmonics are better balanced. It's airier. It's more natural in the vocal harmonics and instrument harmonics. It's what I think the treble on this should have sounded more like. I think it needed this level of energy if it was going to pull off that vocal forwardness it has with the fundamentals. This, I do think, is the more detailed sounding set, to my ears at least, compared to the Vampire. But then again, this is $200 and this is $100, so it makes sense. The Vampire and its anti-sibilance tuning works very well, but I'll say if your library is packed with female vocals and you don't mind some extra energy there, the Yume IV, I think, is a option, and it does tend to go on sale decently often. Let's go ahead and wrap things up. If you want something that will make female vocals pop and shine, I think that the Magic One or the Yume IV are my personal picks here. The Magic One is more energetic with vocals. It's also the most airy and sort of detailed compared to the sets on the table here. It has bass that rivals the Vampire in terms of rumble and punch. It's just very well balanced. I really like the Magic One. It's just a very pleasant sounding set. If this is too energetic for you, the step down would be the Yume IV. Still very forward with female vocals, but not as excitable in the bass or in the treble compared to the Magic One, making this a more relaxed overall presentation. The Studio 2 is an interesting set. It's pretty warm and vocal forward. It's just that the way it presents vocals is quite unique. It's a very flat sounding presentation. I think it's basically perfect for treble sensitive folks or people who want to focus on male vocals and female vocals without too much harmonic energy. It's a pretty unique tuning, all things considered. Finally, you have the Vampire. It's got bass, again, very similar to what you see on the Magic One, but it has just enough sparkle in the top end to give the slightly more recessed vocal fundamentals some good depth. The instrument harmonics can be sparkly, but not to the point where it becomes sibilant or shouty, and I think it does pretty well at higher volumes. In my opinion, it is the most relaxing sounding set here, if you discount the Studio 2 and its, again, sort of wonky treble presentation. But now we will go ahead and pull up the Audio Amigo rating scale and figure out where we're going to put the Vampire. This is a pretty unique IEM. It has that delicate sort of neutral studio-ish type tuning that I think sounds pretty good with basically any music. It won't be super colored or super exciting, but it'll sound pretty decent. The main things that separate it from the competition, in my opinion, are the comfort and the comfort. The first comfort is down to these minuscule little shells here. These have a wonderful chance of fitting in the most ears possible. Large-eared people will appreciate how light and unassuming they are, and small-eared people, I think, will be very happy at how nice the fit can be in their ears. The other comfort is the tuning. While the treble is not the most natural or detailed sounding, it feels like it was almost specifically tuned to reduce sibilance while still providing just enough sparkle so that it doesn't sound completely boring and lifeless in the treble. The bass might not be boosted to Kingdom Come, but it still has decent texture so that you get the quality without getting the fatigue from the bass. This won't tire you out if you hate the big droning boomy bass notes. The sound here, again, isn't exactly super exciting or anything ultra dynamic. It's going for the slightly warm neutral signature. Again, I think it's a very pleasant coloration for basically most music. Some people will want more color, but I think this is just a good amount of overall color. That dynamism does improve with volume, and I think that the comfort is, again, pretty stellar. All things considered, I will be putting this IEM in the but I like this tier. However, I think if you have tiny ears and you're looking for a daily driver, this could jump up a tier or two depending on your taste in music and how many IEMs you've tried and how frustrated you are with how big IEMs are. The size here on the Vampire will either be an amazing selling point that will have you wondering where to get these, or it'll be like, oh, those are tiny. Cool. Doesn't really matter to me. So, who do I think should or should not buy the Kotori Vampire here? Well, right off the bat, I think treble heads and bass heads just won't be happy with the amount of bass and treble that is on offer here on the Vampire. It just won't be enough for either group. In a similar way, if you're the type of person that prioritizes details and, resolution above all else, this probably won't be to your liking because that's not really what this IEM is about. Also, I'll say, if you have the Magic One and it fits you and you like the sound, this is not necessarily an upgrade. Even if you did get this on sale for less than this, if this fits your ears, these two sound very similar. If, however, you have tiny, tiny ears and you're looking for a relaxing sounding IEM that's comfortable both physically and sonically, then I wouldn't say walk, maybe run to pick up a Vampire. Similarly, if you were a fan of the Magic One but found it too big for your ears or too bright and fatiguing, then I think that the Vampire could be the answer for you. Lastly, if you're looking for a small, light, easy to drive IEM for everyday use at school or work, and even commuting with those with some foam tips for the attenuation, I think that the tiny little Vampire here can be a very compelling everyday carry IEM if you want something that has good isolation and provides a very relaxing sound. That's it for my Halloween review of the Vampire. Hopefully this one makes it up in time, and if not, Feliz Dia de los Muertos to everybody. If you want your own set of the Vampire, the link is in the description, unaffiliated as always. Support smaller brand folks, especially when they make sort of unique, small, good products like this. Coming up next is the Twistoro Wood Note, so go ahead and look forward to that one. For now, though, thank you all so very much for watching. Huge shout out to my Compadres Club members. Remember, $5 a month. You get to decide what I review with your money. You help make the channel more independent, less reliant on samples and tours, which I personally very much appreciate. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great rest of your day. This has been Omar with Audio Amigo Reviews, and I'll catch y'all next time.